I'd like to think in time we will view packaging as not a separate thing, but just part of a product, so that it comes back to that point of consumers have an experience when they purchase something or when they use something. So I would hope that maybe in the future everything sort of works as well as wine or some technology products where you really sense that the packaging is part of the experience. And maybe that will affect how we even use the term packaging.
Packaging design should seduce, inform, and even save the planet. I'm BRANDERMAN, and this is BRANDERMAN, the podcast where I talk with experts to uncover what it actually takes to make a positive impact on consumers, the market, and society. Warning: keep this podcast out of the reach of close-minded marketers and designers. Before the interview, let me introduce my design agency.
Brands with purpose. Human, agile, honest brands that leave no one indifferent. Tridimage creates and revitalizes brands to imagine and shape the future. Tridimage, the branding and packaging design agency for bold brands.
Today I had the pleasure to speak with Jon Marshall, a British industrial designer, partner at Pentagram, whose work fuses product design with strategy, branding, packaging, and digital experiences. Jon joined Pentagram as a partner in 2018. Pentagram is a renowned multi-disciplinary, independently owned design studio founded in 1972. Prior to joining Pentagram, he was director of industrial design consultancy MAP, which he co-founded with Barber and Osgerby, where he created products and experiences for global brands like IBM, Virgin Atlantic, and Google. In this episode, we discussed the importance of sustainability and changing consumer expectations, and the future of packaging design as a part of the product experience. Jon also explains why packaging should be viewed as an integral part of the product, rather than a separate entity. Today with me, Jon Marshall. Jon, each of us is a container of ideas, projects, and dreams. However, we can't read the label when we are inside the jar. What do you think your label says, or what would you like it to say?
I guess part of the label would be where I'm from, which is often what we write on package labels. So I actually grew up in a village in Dorset, which is on the south coast of the UK, and I spent a lot of time by the sea, enjoying nature. And my mother was a school teacher, my father was an engineer. I often say to people that I think those are kind of great parents' vocations to have, to be interested in design. So the pragmatic part comes from my father, from the engineering side, and the wanting to learn or lifelong learning comes from my mother, who's a teacher. Those two things, I think, have carried with me, throughout my design career. Maybe that would be on the back of the label, the origin, and maybe on the front, it would be what I sort of tend to believe currently that I'm best at, which is designing products and user experiences, working with my team and really doing industrial design, which operates products, packaging, environments, but doing that through the lens of branding because of where I am, which is as a partner at Pentagram, which is primarily involved in working with brands. I think that would be my label.
Building a brand is like a journey. It starts with defining where we are and asking ourselves where we want to go. What was the path that led you from studying product design to becoming a partner at Pentagram's London office?
It was quite a long path, and I would say I'm sort of 2/3 of the way through my career. So I've been practicing design for 30 years, and I feel like I'll go on for at least another 15 years. So it breaks into 3 nice chunks. And the first chunk was just education and getting lots and lots of experience working in different studios. And then the middle chunk was taking on more leadership positions. And then the third chunk I'm just starting, which is this journey at Pentagram. In a bit more detail, I was at school studying both science subjects and art. And I didn't really know very much about design practice, not even graphic design or anything. I thought that studying art might lead me into being an artist in some way. So I did a 1-year art foundation course, which is a really fantastic course that we have here in the UK, where you look at all sorts of different disciplines, both art and design, and then you can specialize and then typically prepare a portfolio to go and do a degree. That's where I discovered industrial design. And then I went to the Royal College of Art to do an MA in industrial design, which is really, I think, the thing that sort of set me on my current path, because that's where I met Daniel Weil, who was the professor of the course. And I really aligned with his views on what industrial designers could do and could be within industry. And then I worked in a couple of other different studios, ran my own studio for a bit. And that sort of took me through that first 15 years, with the last position there really being at Pentagram, which is where Daniel was a partner. And we worked on a lot of projects for United Airlines at that point, which was really fascinating because we were doing like everything, from lounges to seats to knives and forks to tickets and salt and pepper shakers and things like that. And then after that, I had a couple of other positions which were more leadership positions, first at Barber, Osgerby, which is a furniture and product practice. And then what came out of that was MAP Project Office, which was a kind of a spin-off from Barber Osgerby. I ran that studio with a really fantastic team, and we did a lot of industrial design projects, particularly in that period when there was the beginning of the Internet of Things and the beginning of Kickstarter. So we were working with lots of startups and working on lots of technology projects. And then 5 years ago, was invited to join Pentagram as a partner by Daniel Weil. So he's somebody who's had a big influence on me at various points in my career, both as his student and as his employee, and then later as a partner at Pentagram. I think the period that I had working for Daniel at Pentagram was what exposed me to branding, which is, now I say that I'm sort of doing industrial design through the lens of branding. But I think that's where I really kind of fell in love with brands and what brands mean and what it means to work with brands. And obviously within that, a significant aspect of that is packaging.
When it comes to packaging, how does it feel to practice industrial design through the lens of branding?
Well, I think packaging is not something I set out to do. It's a subset of what industrial designers can do, but it's also a subset of what graphic designers can do. The time I sort of became really interested in it was when I was at MAP and we were working with a company called Kano Computers. They make computer kits for kids, sort of a STEM product. And the product was a kit. So it was one of those moments when myself and the team looked at it and we realized, okay, there is no product and packaging. The product and the packaging is one single experience. That was really something that got me very interested in packaging. And I sort of thought, well, all packaging should be like that. All packaging should just be a subset of the overall brand experience. It's been very natural for me now at Pentagram to work on packaging from the structural packaging side, and then obviously working directly with and alongside graphic designers who are doing the graphic aspect of that.
Pentagram was founded on the premise of collaborative interdisciplinary partners working together in an independently owned firm of equals. Can you describe what it feels to be partnered at Pentagram as it turns 50?
I'm 52, so it's incredible to be a partner in a firm that was founded when I was 2 and founded along that very simple principle of creativity, practicing design in friendship with partners. And the key idea of Pentagram is that when the 5 partners set it up in 1972, they always envisaged that they would bring in new partners. And so they would grow the firm sort of horizontally by bringing in new partners who would have their own teams and bring expertise and discipline. And they also foresaw that eventually they would leave and hand it on, which is a sort of tremendous act of generosity, but it's also a way of keeping the organism of Pentagram alive. What attracted me to it was just this sense of working as an individual designer with your team within this larger group where there are other designers working with their team and where we share not only, resources, but knowledge and experience and build friendships and collaborations. And for me personally, it's a tremendously social environment. You get to work with partners who are designers who are older than you and more experienced. And also, at a certain point, you get to work with partners who are younger than you and who bring enthusiasm. And I think that's a real gift. And yeah, I feel very fortunate to be part of it.
And what are some of the lessons you have learned over these 5 years in your role as partner at Pentagram?
Yeah, it seems to have flown by the last five years. So I think that from a design point of view, when you're part of a company that has just such an incredibly diverse portfolio going back many years of amazing projects, and the current partnership was also, incredibly talented people, it sort of makes you want to go the extra mile on every project and do your best work that you possibly can. And then from a business side, the sort of sense of sharing at Pentagram leads to a kind of an openness and transparency from a business point of view within our group as partners, which I've actually also found really helpful dealing with clients, just being open and upfront and straightforward about the business aspect of what we do, I think is really important. Because design is a business, and it's important that we recognize that and we work to make the industry and to be as professional as possible. And that's good for the industry and good for all of us.
Though Pentagram roots in the 1970s were multidisciplinary, I think graphics and brand have arguably been more dominant over the past decade. What is the special flavor that industrial design adds to the Pentagram's recipe?
When Pentagram started, there were 5 partners, 3 graphic designers, 1 architect, and an industrial designer. So back then, the 3D and 2D aspects were quite balanced. And now we're 22 partners at the moment, and probably 16 or 17 would consider themselves on the graphic design side. But I think the world has also changed. So within graphics, we've got subsets like digital design, data design, sound design, things like that have grown out of the sort of field of graphic design. And equally, something like packaging is an area where graphic designers traditionally have sort of worked in 3 dimensions. It's not as clear cut as just sort of saying that industrial designers do 3D and graphic designers do 2D. As it stands at the moment, I think the sort of importance of having graphic design and 3-dimensional design or industrial design sitting alongside each other means that Pentagram can kind of attract and do any project. We can build brands and also execute across visual identities, products, packaging, digital, games, exhibitions, and transport. So for any sort of larger consultancy that wants to work with the best brands, to be able to deliver across all those touch points. So yeah, I certainly feel like I'm very welcome within the group, even though industrial designers are somewhat of a minority.
Why do you believe it's a great time to be an industrial designer with a 3D brain?
When I graduated from the Royal College of Art in the 90s, it was the sort of beginning of the dot-com bubble, and there was a lot of digital design happening, and many industrial designers that I was at college with went into digital design and found that this 3D brain was kind of great for understanding the multi-dimensional aspect of digital design. And then I think we've got a whole series of those sort of changes in technology that are affecting us now. So the metaverse, for example, is a 3-dimensional space.
Yeah.
I think we also have all sorts of new different technologies, AI, but also embedded technology in devices and autonomous vehicles and all sorts of things like that. And all those problems need to be solved. And I've found that throughout my career as an industrial designer, there's always been a technological evolution that has meant that more work is there for industrial designers. A really good example is even in the pandemic, although many businesses were slowing down, the fact that we were living most of our lives at home meant that lots of brands had to transition to being direct to consumer. So during that period, maybe there was less sort of product design work. There was a lot of structural packaging innovation around direct-to-consumer packaging. We were extremely busy working with brands to help them to deliver products to their consumers safely and consistent with their brand values. And of course, in a sustainable way.
Jon, what is your favorite current professional habit?
Well, post-pandemic, one of the professional habits that I have adopted is at Pentagram, we have a split working model. We do 3 days a week in the studio and 2 days at home. It's actually closer to 4 days a week now. So one of the things that's become a habit for me is trying to keep my calendar completely clear on Fridays to give me time to do writing, thinking, podcasts, and, occasionally to go out and see an exhibition to kind of set my mind on the creative part of our work, ready for the week ahead.
That's a great tip. And what is the design tactic that has worked for you time and time again?
I think a lot of designers, especially younger designers, don't know how to get the idea. 2 or 3 of the things we do. One is not trying to come up with the idea, but just do a lot of talking. So we'll set up meetings. So you won't do sketching. We won't do, looking at images, but we'll just sit in a room and we'll just talk around the brief that we've got and maybe do some writing. I think that's a really good tactic. It avoids that feeling of the blank page where you have to do the first sketch. The other thing is we do a huge amount of making. I really encourage my team. And when I talk to young designers or students, I always say, make really terrible, quick models. Take a piece of paper and fold it or even tear it, don't even cut it. That sort of just pushes you through that first part of the project where you're not really sure what the key idea is. But every time you know that something is not right, you've narrowed off one branch of the tree and that helps you to settle on the design. So those are sort of 2 tactics which often surprise young designers when they come to the studios, the amount of talking and also just the amount of making and the very low quality of the making earlier in a project.
What, in your opinion, sets apart a great industrial designer from a good one?
Great industrial designer has to be willing to learn. They have to be aware that this is a team activity. So you can be the lead industrial designer in a team, but there's always a team. Even if you're a solo practitioner, the client is part of your team. Being generous with ideas and being willing to discuss ideas. I think that those are some of the attributes of a great industrial designer. I admire designers who have an extreme level of attention to detail, which I don't have, but the businesses that I admire a lot who do great design, that there's often a kind of extreme attention to detail and a kind of a purity of graphic communication.
Jon's interest lies in working with emerging technologies, creating accessible user experiences and projects embracing sustainability. What is the biggest packaging design challenge you have faced so far at Pentagram, and how did you overcome it?
One of the projects I did quite early after joining Pentagram was for a brand called Heights. So Heights are a direct-to-consumer brand that sells care vitamins, basically. They're a direct-to-consumer brand and kind of came to us with the brief, which sort of it seemed quite simple in a way. The way they described it was just, we've got this month's supply of vitamins in this capsule and we need to deliver them to consumers through their letterboxes in a less than 25 millimeter thick package. That's much smaller than a letterbox, but it was what qualified for the lowest level of shipping cost in many countries. And so they wanted us to either find or design a package. So we did a lot of early research into different materials and eventually settled on the idea of taking a plastic bottle and either sort of squashing it very, very low, so it's very low profile with a very large lid, or sort of squashing it sideways so it's very thin with a very small lid. Within that very thin bottle with the very small lid, we found a form that actually our client really liked. And then it was extremely challenging to find a manufacturer to make such an unusual bottle. And I think we're just incredibly lucky to have a client that really believed in what we were doing. They believed in investing in design and believed in finding the right answer, even if that took them longer than they'd originally anticipated. The end result was really fantastic. They've been a really big success. And they credit quite a bit of it to the bottle being very unusual and therefore people making a connection with the product through the design of the packaging.
What do you think is the role of a bespoke bottle design in brand building?
I think it can sometimes be a distraction, actually, a bespoke bottle, because we do have some clients who sort of want a bespoke bottle, and on further analysis, they can sometimes be better served by finding an off-the-shelf bottle, because there's so many different off-the-shelf bottles, and then, customizing it and doing sort of a really compelling graphic and branding effort on it. But for those clients for whom it is the right solution and they're prepared to go through time to develop it and go through the tooling and stuff, I think it has a couple of advantages. One is they have their own bottle, and it can often be as cost effective to manufacture your own bottle as to buy one off the shelf, provided that you've covered the tooling cost. So it gives them security in terms of being able to put their product in the custom bottle. And then crucially, from a design point of view, gives them the opportunity to stand out from their competitors, and it makes it much more difficult to copy or imitate if you do create something unique. And then sometimes, and heights is an example of that, the shape of the bottle fulfills a need that's not met by anything off the shelf. So that uniqueness, is a practical and design or brand advantage.
The packaging of the future faces important challenges from a design point of view. Sustainability is at odds with user experience. How can we cover all these fronts?
At the moment, we're in a cycle where consumers and businesses and designers all care deeply about the environment, but there are no quick fixes. And as you mentioned, sometimes you have to balance the desire to do something sustainable with perhaps increased cost or inconvenience to the consumer. So I think as designers, we have to educate ourselves, and we bear a great deal of responsibility for this next period where we are essentially trying to reduce the carbon footprint of many products through changing materials, reducing the size of things using new materials, and improving recycling rates. It's actually an incredibly exciting time, even though the challenge is huge.
What are some of the issues you wrestle with being an environmentally conscious designer? What are you optimistic about, and what are you afraid of?
One of the classic issues is when you design products that are displayed at retail. When you analyze products, a lot of the front face of the product is bigger than it really needs to be. And so one of the challenges is having the discussion with the client about shelf presence, for example, versus oversized or wasted material, which has an impact on transport costs and therefore sustainability. The other one is that there are fantastic new materials available that could solve many of the issues that we face when we're trying to reduce the carbon footprint of products or solve engineering issues. But some legislation prevents us from doing that. Some entirely justifiable point of view of being risk averse that some clients have prevents us from doing that. So those are a couple of the challenges. The thing that I'm most excited about is definitely around new materials, because those new materials are there. So it's just about persuading the first few brands to start using them to get them into the kind of packaging or product stream to show that they work and they perform for other brands to follow. So I'm really, really, really excited about that. And I'm kind of nervous that we're not able to do that as quickly as we would like to. It's taking too much time, and, we don't have time.
Now I propose we play a game. As you know, a ping pong table is a must in many creative studios. So I will make you a series of brief questions, and you have to choose one or another concept. And if you want, you can explain why you choose it. Are you ready for BRANDERMAN's ping pong?
I'm ready. Yes, let's have a game.
I am a designer, or I am a consultant?
I'm a designer. Yeah, I'm a designer at heart, I think, for sure.
Close brief or blue sky brief?
Oh, that's really difficult. The two parts of my brain like both. So I love close briefs because I think with the limitations come the most creativity. So I'd probably lean more on that. But I also think that the kind of open questions can sometimes lead to unexpected things. So, but yeah, if I really had to choose, I'm going to go with close brief.
Creative strategist or strategic designer?
I think I'm leaning more towards strategic designer because I don't think that you can sort of separate strategy and design. The strategic part of what we do is represented right throughout our activities and our design process. So whereas I feel like sometimes creative strategist sort of feels like maybe that's something you do in the beginning of a project. And I love working with creative strategists, but I'm not one. I'm more of a designer who thinks strategically during the whole project.
A creation project or a redesign project?
I'm actually quite a big fan of a redesign project. I think that might relate to things I've talked about earlier around sustainability. I think we have a fantastic opportunity at the moment. Every time we redesign something, we can make it better. We can make it have less impact. We can make it last longer. We can use new materials. And whilst I like designing completely new things, I think there's lots of work to be done in updating and redesigning.
Right. Focus groups or gut feelings?
Gut feelings for me, yeah. I've been in some focus groups and they're a fantastic tool, but certainly with my work, I'm finding that clients often want to work very quickly and that gut feeling is fantastic. So,
mass market or premium market?
Working in the premium segment gives you, as the designer, lots of choice in terms of materials, processes. But I like the appeal of working in the mass market because it gives you greater influence.
Big established brand or niche emerging brand?
I love working with niche emerging brands. Yeah, you tend to have more direct connection with decision makers in smaller brands. And no disrespect meant to big brands. But yeah, I love smaller brands.
Conceptualization or execution?
I'm very, very detail focused. So I love the execution phase. I think that's where the real design happens.
Label design or bottle design?
Bottle design, definitely.
Form follows function or form follows emotion?
I'm a bit old school, so form follows function, I think.
Leading designers or continuing to design all your life?
Continuing to design all your life.
Remote work or face-to-face work?
Face-to-face, for me, yeah.
And finally, great designers are born or great designers are made?
Oh, I think great designers are made, yeah. I think you have to work at it. I definitely believe that sort of 99% perspiration, 1% inspiration. And I think design is a skill that you really have to work at.
What do you predict will emerge in the packaging design space in 10 or 20 years from now? And how do you imagine the term package design will evolve?
I think a couple of the things that will happen. So obviously sustainability is a big driver, but I think also related to that is maybe changing expectations around what consumers want from packaging. So you might have new materials, but you might also have reduction or even elimination of some packaging through consumer desire. Technology will also play a part in that. I'd like to think in time we will view packaging as not a separate thing, but just part of a product so that it comes back to that point of consumers have an experience when they purchase something or when they use something. You have things like wine where that's working really well, that the bottle and the label and the wine itself is all part of the experience. It's an integral connection between those three things. So I would hope that maybe in the future, everything sort of works as well as wine or some technology products where you really sense that the packaging is part of the experience. And maybe that will affect how we even use the term packaging.
If you could just take a pill and learn any subject, anything, what would it be?
Wow. If I could choose to be brilliant at something, I would choose to be brilliant at languages. To be completely at ease in communicating in different languages, as indeed you are now communicating in your second language. The world is so connected, and if we want design to be global, we really need to make an effort to understand all these different cultures and different people. And yeah, that would be my big wish for learning, probably something to do in my retirement.
What is something that people don't know about you that if they did, they would be surprised?
Since the age of 18, I've been learning to play bass guitar. I've never actually accomplished being very good at it. I can bang out a tune, but I would say that's like my lifelong musical side to my life is sort of constantly battling with trying to play bass guitar. And so, yeah, that's probably something people don't necessarily know about me.
What is the most important thing on your to-do list for your professional life? What is your next adventure?
It's quite relevant actually because I'm coming up to 5 years at Pentagram. When I joined, I kind of decided I'd give myself 5 years to settle in, to build a portfolio of projects, to build a team. And then the next phase of that was to really try to choose projects which really have an impact, challenge myself and do things that are sort of outside my normal suite of projects, to try and do things that I really love. That's kind of on my to-do list for this year, is to see if I can transition into doing bigger projects with bigger impact and focus on categories that I love. Yeah, see if I can make that work.
Jon, thanks for this inspiring conversation. You are living proof that designers live in the future and that we are always trying to bring it forward to the present day. Cheers. Gracias.
Thank you. Gracias, Herman.
I hope you have enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. You can check the episode notes for all the relevant links. I also invite you to follow me on Instagram and on my website, branderman.design. Follow the podcast in your favorite app so you don't miss the next episode of Branderman, the podcast where we try to uncover how to make a positive impact on consumers, the market and society through package design.